Is your team not performing well? Is morale low and turnover high? Are you falling further behind the competition? I'm here to help. I'm Shani Magoski, and this is the Leadershifter Show, where business strategy and culture finally meet. Explore shifts of all kinds required to build cultures of trust, engagement, and execution excellence. I promise I am not your typical boring leadership consultant, and I will help you and your team get your shift together. Hello, Leadershifters, and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast, The Leadershifter Show, with me, Shani. Today, we're going to talk about psychological safety, and you know that is one of my very favorite topics. I talk about it all the time to the point where I feel like I'm proselytizing. And we've got two experts in psychological safety on the podcast today. We have Minette Norman, who joins us from just north of San Francisco, and Karolin Helbig, who joins us from Bonn, Germany. And we're going to hear how these two started to work together as part of the learning today. But I think the critical thing, why you're going to want to pay attention to this, is we all know what psychological safety is, right? And it's a concept, it's a theory, blah, blah, blah. But how do we do psychological safety? So that's what these rock stars are going to tell us about today. And I also just want to give you a little bit of context about these women because their credentials are exceptional. Karolin has a PhD in human genetics and is a former McKinsey consultant. And Minette has many decades of leading global teams in the software industry, most recently VP of Engineering at Autodesk. So you can see that these women are real dummies and they don't have any practical experience to bring to the conversation today. Obviously, just kidding. We've got a lot of expertise to draw on. So welcome, Minette and Karolin to the Leadershifter Show.
Thank you.
Well, I am really excited to have you both join us today. And I think one of my first questions is, how the heck did you link up from the West Coast of the United States to Germany?
Yeah, it's one of the questions we often get asked, and I'll start. And this is sort of a two-part story. I'll start, and then Karolin will finish. So we met in a class in the spring of 2021. We were enrolled in a class based on Amy Edmondson's work, and what we were doing is getting certified in running psychological safety assessments based on the 7 questions that she includes in the Fearless organization. So there we met in this online class, and we were both in a small cohort together. And we just had kind of connected. We really liked the way the other person showed up and talked about the topic. And then I was on a podcast of one of the other students talking about leadership. And Karolin happened to tune into the podcast. And I'm going to let her just pick up the story and finish from there.
I love that. It's kind of a great partnership. You're sharing the storytelling.
I listened to the podcast and I really, really enjoyed it because I experienced that Minette was really thinking very similarly to me. So we are both leadership consultants helping clients to really foster psychological safety in their organizations. And so what we are always confronted with is, how do we actually do it? Exactly your question from the beginning. And that was exactly what Minette was talking about. And I was really thrilled listening to the podcast. So immediately I wrote an email to Minette reaching out, crazy idea, proposing to really put our brains and experience and hearts together and create the material we were missing. At first we both didn't think of a book. It was more a booklet, maybe for free download for our clients or something. But it all started with this email from Bonn, Germany to the US. Crazy idea. And actually our whiteboard Miro, we are using a lot of virtual tools, the Miro whiteboard And the new board is still called Crazy Idea up to upside down.
2 years later, it keeps growing and growing, and the crazy ideas never stop. But that's
We have more crazy ideas, actually.
So great. Okay. And so you went from maybe white paper type intention to writing a book called The Psychological Safety Playbook, Lead More Powerfully by Being More Human. So my understanding is that there's, I think, 25 different actionable tips there. And you've got kind of 5 major plays in the playbook. But before, and I'm going to ask you to expound on that. But before I do, folks, I want to read a testimonial about this book from one of my favorite thought leaders anywhere, Seth Godin. This is what he said about this book. Powerful ideas, generously shared, simple, actionable, and urgent. This book is a must-read for anyone who cares enough to lead. I mean, who wouldn't read this on that recommendation? He is, if anyone knows how to get him on my podcast, please let me know. Okay, so please share some of the highlights from the book.
Karolin, do you want to start and then I'll continue? How do you want to do this?
Okay, so you mentioned already a little bit the structure, and the structure is very deliberate. And our idea was to create something as short as possible. So really boil down to the very, very essentials, because it's written for the busy leader. So written for our clients who don't have time to dig into 300, 400 pages textbook, academic stuff and things like that. So it's short, deliberately short, and being short is its strength, and it's deliberately structured. It's organized in the 5 plays you mentioned, and in each play, so the plays are kind of the big chapters, the overarching areas, and within each chapter you find 5 very actionable, very concrete things you can do.
Okay.
So maybe I give you a flavor of what these 5 big areas are about, and maybe then, Minette, you can take it from there and dive maybe a little bit into the very concrete things which are behind that.
Great.
So, and maybe one point, one additional point is what's important to us is there is no actual order. So the reader is not supposed to read from A to Z. It's really a playbook also from the inside. So you can just open it wherever you want and start reading and pick what resonates. So it's really that as an invitation to play. So even if I now explain the big areas in a certain order, there is actually no order. You can start anywhere. However, the first big chapter is communicate courageously.
Okay.
So how we speak and how we show up, how authentic, vulnerable we are willing to be. And the second is mastering the art of listening. This is really a very crucial, and each of the 5 areas are, in our eyes, really very important levers for fostering psychological safety. So they are all important. And the third is managing your reactions.
Okay.
We are all human beings being triggered. Leaders are triggered as well. And the way we are dealing with being reactive and not reacting automatically, but choosing our response, but deliberately, that's a very crucial thing to foster psychological safety. Then the 4th one is embracing risk and failure. So what do we do when things don't go as planned? Immediately we have the urge, who's responsible, whose fault was it? And instead shifting to curiosity and asking questions like, okay, what can we learn from that? What's the next best experiment? And then the 5th
failing forward mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fifth one is designing inclusive rituals. So, for example, the way we lead meetings.
Love that.
So
Great.
I have 5 big areas.
Every single one of those 5 areas sets up bells in my head that say, yes, 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 yes. I think that was 5.
Yeah. 5 yeses, yeah. Do you want to dive a little bit into like what some of them are, Shani?
I would be allowed to. I mean, I don't want you to give away all 25 because I want people to buy and read the book. But yeah, if you could highlight, maybe 1 or 2 of your favorites from each of the 5 plays so that people can walk away from listening or watching this and do one of those things since there is no order, as Karolin.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think maybe the best way to use our time is I'll pick 1 from each of the 5. So you'll get 5 of the 25 ideas and, see what you want to experiment with. And I'll start again to Karolin's point, really you can go in any order, and I'm just going to go in the order that it's in the book because it comes to my mind that way. So if you think about communicating courageously, one of the first things that we offer in the book is advice for leaders. And that is to really open your mind and your heart to other perspectives. And one of the easiest, simplest, and best ways to do that is to get in the practice of asking, what am I missing? And it's that phrase, what am I missing, that is so inviting because it's actually signaling that you as a leader are human and that you have your blind spots as we all do, and you can't possibly see everything there is to see, and that you're inviting different perspectives in. And although it sounds really simple, sometimes it takes time for people to get comfortable with the idea that you really mean it when you ask that question. Let's say you get up at a town hall and you present your ideas, and then you say, what am I missing? People may hesitate if that's the first time you've ever asked that question because they need to know that you really mean it. And you're not going to punish them if you challenge them. You're not going to embarrass them. That's all about psychological safety. So it's really, and I'm going to actually segue into sort of the number 2 and number 3 things I was going to share is that when you get, let's say you do get someone who challenges you and said, have you thought of that? The most important thing, I'm going to jump into the second play, which is about mastering the art of listening, is that you truly listen to understand the person's question, right? And we say, practice not preparing your response. So really just fully listen. Maybe ask a clarifying question. Have I understood you? Do I truly understand what you're saying, what your perspective is, maybe what your question is? So, we often listen to respond rather than to fully take the time to understand. And we talk a lot about that. People get confused often that listening to understand doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything the other person says. We might actually change our mind if we get new information, but not always. And in some cases, it's totally fine that you think one thing and I think another, but it's very important that we understand each other.
Right. And
right?
Feel seen and heard because they've been able to express their point of view, and it's empowering to even have been asked in the first place.
Exactly. And we all as human beings need to feel heard and seen and valued. That's just innate in us. So being heard without being shot down, being heard and truly understood, so fundamental to us. And so then I'm going to lead into the third play in the book and one of the moves from there, which is really managing how we respond when we might get challenged and when we might get defensive. Because of course we do get defensive, and our brains don't distinguish between being attacked physically or being in danger physically and being socially attacked. So to our brains, we are just under attack. Our idea is criticized, we're under attack. Our amygdala fires. We feel, in danger, and the fight, flight, and freeze reaction takes over. What happens then is we are certainly not at our best. We are not at our highest self. And we are likely to do something we're going to regret that can really damage psychological safety. And we've all seen this happen. We've probably done it ourselves. I know I've done it inadvertently. We've been victims of it. When someone gets defensive and they lash out at you, and they lash out at you publicly, you're embarrassed, you're maybe humiliated, you may never want to speak up again.
That's right.
And it's so horrible. It's damaging not only to the person who is shut down or embarrassed, but everyone else who witnessed that exchange now knows that this is not a safe environment. I'm not going to be the one to raise my hand. I'm not going to be the dissenting voice. or the one to propose the challenging question, because I saw what just happened to him or her or them.
Right, collateral damage.
Collateral damage, and it really impacts a whole population when it happens. And so we want to really encourage leaders and everyone else, because we all have these reactions, to do one simple thing, which it sounds again simple but can be tricky, and that is to recognize that we're getting defensive and pause. Take that one breath. And in that moment that you take that breath, the amygdala stops reacting. We have our higher prefrontal cortex back online. We can ask a question. We can have a calm voice, and we can say, thank you. Thank you for that provocative question. I hadn't thought of that. Or thank you for that feedback. That actually hit me kind of hard, and I need a moment to think about it. And in that calm moment, we have established that that's really okay, right? That you can ask me that.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt for 1 second and say what I love about that approach is it pays attention not just to the words you say when you respond instead of react. It also helps you manage how you say it in terms of your vocal quality, your body language, your facial expressions, because if that stuff doesn't match what you're saying, they're not going to believe the words.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you say thank you and you're like really mad and red in the face, and the people are not going to believe that, right? But if it's like this calm, like that, it's amazing what that one breath, because people kind of think like, what do I have to do? Pause for 2 minutes to calm down? No, really just what a one breath can do to lower sort of the body temperature, lower the heart rate, and lower your voice so that you're not going to shout. You could actually quietly say, to your point about tone, thank you. And whoof, even a breath out loud, like, oh, that kind of hit me. Like, I need a moment to think about it, but I appreciate it. Right. Yeah. So that's what we talk about in our third. That's one of the moves in our third play. And we really recommend that people just tune into those physical signals of, I'm getting defensive. Let me slow down for a moment.
Yeah. And that response also ties back to play number 1 about communicating courageously, in the sense that you're admitting it's vulnerable to say, oh, that hit me. So yeah, I love, it's like a fabric, and like you said, it's not in order, and not only can you do them individually, but it's sort of like a pool game. When you hit one ball, you might be hitting more than one.
Exactly. I know it's so true that everything's so intrinsically linked. Like one of the things I didn't mention that's in our first play is becoming bravely self-aware. And that's also so important because we often just go unconsciously into the work world. But when we become aware of how we get defensive, our reactions, our tone of voice, our body language, how we respond, then we can create the environment that we want to be a part of. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've just gone into 3. I want to pause and see if maybe Karolin wants to take the 4th one, which is our soldier.
I'd love to, and Shani, I love this expression of the fabric underneath. And you're so right. Every action we recommend and we suggest are kind of linked together. And there are certain kind of underlying themes which are important to us. Minette just mentioned self-awareness. So leading others really starts with leading yourself. So we really need to manage ourselves much more skillfully if we want to become a better leader. And another topic is really, and that's why we call the subtitle of our book, Lead More Powerfully by Being More Human. So having the courage to show up as a full human being is so powerful. And let me take one example now from the 4th play, Embracing Risk and Failure, which has a lot to do, with the showing up as a full human being, including all your failures and your limits and so on. So one of the really most powerful things a leader can do is to admit a mistake, to admit a failure, admit, oh, here I was wrong. I changed opinion. I learned now new things, and this is what I learned. And really openly admit the learning journey and show up as a learning human being who does know it all from the start. We are all human beings. No one of us knows it all. However, our traditional leadership model so often still requires leaders to play kind of the perfect leader who knows it all,
Right.
who gives guidance in every situation and so on. So, and what we propose is for leaders to have the courage to be more human and to really show up as a human being, including this vulnerability. And this is a delicate balance of being grounded and open and being vulnerable and resilient. So, of course, it's not easy. It might be simple what we suggest. However, it really takes practice. So sharing openly a mistake or a failure and discuss the lessons learned is a very powerful thing taken out of play 4. And maybe we then do the whole round with play 5 and afterwards have more time to explore further questions. So play 5 is design inclusive rituals. And what we focus there on is really meetings, because meetings are such a big part of our working life, right? So often when we see how meetings are really run, we see there is no facilitator and there are no really ground rules, no agreed upon ground rules. And one of the things we propose is to really commit to a no interruption rule. To have a facilitator really monitoring this and intervene if the facilitator sees, oh, there is someone who is getting interrupted. And often, I don't know if you know that from your experience, but that's what I observed, often it's the same persons again and again who are getting interrupted.
Absolutely.
So having
And the same people who speak for most of the meeting as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's going
That time, making sure everyone gets the chance to contribute. We also propose one kind of possible ground rule. No one speaks twice before anyone speaks. Everyone speaks once.
Yeah.
So making sure that really everyone has the chance to raise their voice is a very important part. And this doesn't happen automatically. This is really something you need, again, to be really deliberate about. And that's why we propose to really assign someone as a facilitator. And the best way to do that is to take turns in being the facilitator, so that not everyone, not the same person is the facilitator again and again. And taking turns and facilitating also has a very productive effect, because then as a facilitator, you suddenly become aware of, oh, all these dynamics going on. I wasn't aware of that.
That's right. It actually makes you a better meeting attendee if you played the role of facilitator.
Yes.
I'm going to take I guess we used to call it a TV timeout, but I guess we can call it a podcast timeout to address people who are listening and watching this 5th play around designing inclusive rituals, and this particular conversation focused on meetings. I want you to think about your own meetings. Do you even have a facilitator? Do you have those time hogs? Are there people who aren't speaking either because they're being drowned out by the people who keep going and going, or because there isn't enough psychological safety to bring, maybe the more shy or less confident people for them to feel comfortable taking the floor, and tying this to not just psychological safety, but productivity, because these suggestions will also make your meetings far more productive and a better use of people's time.
Yeah, and if I can add, so far more productive, better use of time, and you really leverage the diversity and the rich ideas you have at the table. So often, if the minorities or the people who are more shy don't speak up, you miss out really on great ideas. And if you have a facilitator, you can really make sure that the diversity you have in your team maybe is really leveraged, and really the richness and the potential you have is really used.
Yes, yes, and yes again. Okay, so this question might seem like it comes out of nowhere, but as I was thinking about this, and you mentioned Amy Edmondson, who, for those of you who don't know, she is the goddess of psychological safety. She's a Harvard PhD and professor. Psychological safety is a term she coined and popularized, and she's got a famous TED Talk on it. She's written books and apparently gives trainings as well that these two ladies attended in terms of where they met. So we've got Amy Edmondson as a thought leader. Very closely related to that is Brene Brown, right? The vulnerability and shame and all those aspects. We've got Minette and Karolin, and I'll put myself into that very important group of women because I'm out there pounding the table on this as well. Where are the male thought leaders around psychological safety? Go ahead.
Well, I've certainly heard Adam Grant talk about it. It's not his main topic, but he definitely incorporates that. And in fact, I heard a podcast with Adam Grant and Amy Edmondson. It's not what he leads with, but it's definitely in his work. There's also Timothy Clark, who's written a book on the topic. So he's in the space. But I think you're onto something here. I think what you're asking is not just who the men are, but why are women leading this conversation?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to share a personal example of why I got interested in the topic. And maybe that applies to other women. And Karolin, I'd love to hear your thoughts on why women are leading this. But I'll tell you, I was in the tech industry for 30 years. I was often the only woman in the room, or one of very few women in the room. I did not feel psychologically safe most of my career. I would say it was the exception rather than the rule that I felt I could speak up and I could really say what was on my mind. And the tendency that was so common to conformity bias that we have to agree with everyone in the room was so strong. It was really hard to be the one saying, excuse me, I'd kind of like to say something, and really finding a way in. And being then the dissenting voice could be very scary and also very lonely, because I would sometimes feel like the only one, and not just the only woman, but the only woman who is talking about inclusion or psychological safety, and everyone else is just talking about data and software. And we need to put these two together because we need to really bring the best out in our workforce. But very few people wanted to talk about that. So I wonder, I don't know how Amy Edmondson came. Actually, Amy Edmondson came to it through some research she was doing, but how other women are leading this charge, I think it's because what we've experienced in the workplace for millennia and for decades, that it's just been not a great experience for many of us.
Yeah. And I'm going to be a little irreverent and painting with too broad a brush here. So pardon me, I'm not trying to offend anyone, but the tech and the finance bros in particular, I have a Wall Street background and you have a tech background, and two very male-dominated industries. I want to say, gentlemen, you know what psychological safety is because you have it on the golf course, and you have it when you go out drinking with your male colleagues. Apply those concepts in meetings and in one-on-ones with your people and other aspects of the workplace.
Yeah, and I'd love to add, during my time with McKinsey, I really witnessed many teams. I was part of many different teams. I supported, I served clients in different industries, including finance, in different countries. And I experienced, at that time, I didn't know the term psychological safety. I wished I had, but I saw the differences in the teams. And I think it's not a gender question. I fully understand and can relate to what Minette said. And I have witnessed a lot of males who feel not included either. So who are either part of minority or who are not fitting in or feel they are not fitting because they are maybe not the big ego types in in a context, in a situation where everyone is big ego and tough guy and so on. So I know a lot of male colleagues who have kind of the same challenges as we probably all have experienced. And I don't know if now psychological safety is all around. I also spot it everywhere. I'm just reading Neil Eryal's fantastic book, Indestructible, and there's a big, big chapter about psychological safety. So on top of those, maybe authorities who are really focusing, like Amy Edmondson, focusing kind of exclusively on this topic. There are also other very brilliant thought leaders like Adam Grant and Neil Eryal who are touching upon this very important topic. And it was pushed by a study out of Google, right? And this was probably also something which was not female dominated, but more, kind of from the traditional business side.
Right. I think it was called Project Aristotle.
Aristotle, yeah.
Where they were trying to identify the key characteristics of their top performing teams. And it was nothing like having, the most MBAs on the team or, the people with the most experience or the biggest clients. It was the existence of psychological safety. And so, and that also put the concept into more of, the common parlance.
Yeah, exactly. I think Google's Aristotle study really fueled and pushed what Amy Edmondson's work was already before.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They uncovered her work while they were doing this study. And I think that's where I first read that Google study that was published in the New York Times. And that's where I learned the term and learned about Amy Edmondson's work and all of that. And I want to add something because I don't want to make it a gender question either. I mean, I certainly share my own experience, which was, often hard. But I also, in tech, experienced one of the most amazing teams I was ever a part of super high psychological safety, years before any of us knew the term. And it was a team of more men than women, but there were women on the team. And it was the way, this is what Google Project Aristotle uncovered. It was the way we interacted. It was the way we treated each other. It was the way we listened to everyone on the team equally. It was the way we took turns doing the housework. This is where gender often comes in, is that there's office housework, like who's going to organize the meeting, who's going to take notes. And that does typically fall on women in business. In that team, we just automatically agreed. One of our team norms was we will take turns organizing, we will take turns facilitating, we will take turns taking notes. So it never fell on just one person or one demographic. And we got to know each other as human beings. And, I think this is the thing. When we stopped calling each other by labels, like, oh, you're the bro, you're the sensitive woman, whatever it is, we are human beings. We all experience emotion. We experience joy and fear and everything in between. When we see each other as humans, then we can start to have better interactions. And that team, we had each other's back. We had a common goal. We had clear roles and responsibilities. We were putting out the best release we ever could, and we wanted to delight our customers. And that's where we were all driving in that same direction. And we had fun together, and we laughed a lot, and we could make fun of each other because we knew this was all about the common good. And it's a team that this was probably more than 20 years ago. And I am still in touch with many of those people because we had such an amazing experience of working together and producing something great. And that's what psychological safety enables.
It sounds like you're if I were to describe one of the experiences on my favorite team at Goldman Sachs, I would have used like the exact same words. I felt like I was hearing you describe my life. So, I was just trying to be kind of tongue-in-cheek provocative when I made it, a gender thing as part of a provocative question. And yes, of course, it's that's not the right way to describe it. It's too generalized. And I too have had workplaces where that existed and workplaces where it didn't. And it's kudos to the leader for planting the seeds where that's able to grow.
Yeah, and when I listen to you, Minette, thinking back to all the different teams I experienced during my McKinsey time, maybe there's kind of, or maybe for me at least, there was kind of an indicator for what I didn't know was psychological safety, and that's laughter. I was part of teams where we had night shift, and it was really stressful and busy and a lot to do. However, I know we really laughed so much in the middle of the night in our team room, and then there were other teams where the atmosphere was really much more kind of frozen. Yeah, and those teams with the big laughters, everyone felt relaxed and able to show up with the strange preferences in the team room. So yeah, maybe how much you laugh can be a little bit an indicator.
Yeah, I love that.
That's a good barometer. Yeah.
Karolin, there's a question that I've been wanting to ask that I'm going to ask now because it relates to what you just said and circles back to what you said earlier about having worked with companies all over the globe, which is, are there countries or cultures where you see a more natural tendency towards psychological safety?
Interesting question. However, probably I don't have the rich experience in different countries to be able to compare that really. So my experience is really European centered and in Middle East. Maybe that's a question, I don't know, Minette. You have probably a better perspective on that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I have worked in North America, Europe, and Asia quite a bit. I had teams all over those continents, and I don't. It's a really nuanced question actually that I don't have a great answer to. But what I have seen is that it's not so much about the culture whether you get psychological safety or not. It's really about the team and the team norms. There is something I will add about cultures though. In cultures that are very hierarchical, and that is a lot of Asian cultures. Like in Japan, it's very hierarchical. In China, then it's quite hard, especially for people to, for example, challenge the leader. That is anathema to the culture. And I had a conversation recently with a team where one of the team leaders was from India, and he was a team offsite, so he was in the U.S. And we were talking about psychological safety, and I was talking about getting your team members to actually ask you hard questions and challenge you. And he said, in India, Minette, it is so hierarchical that I can't even get my staff members not to call me Mr. Wow. So they won't even use my first name. And so I'm really interested in exploring that even in a hierarchical culture that you run into in India or in Japan or other societies, how can you start to move the needle on psychological safety when it's really hard for people to overcome, thousands of years of culture? And I don't have the answer to that. I would love to have some more anecdotes or research or something on that, because we work with people all over the globe, or especially I work with, and I know Karolin works with multinationals. So you may have someone in Germany who feels very comfortable speaking up, or someone in the US, but their team members in Asia or in other parts of the world may not. And so how do we make this a great experience for everybody? And that I haven't cracked that nut yet.
Yeah. Well, I'd love for people who are listening or watching who have any insight into that, because I agree. I also work globally. I've traveled globally, and also I've experienced some of that hierarchical sort of legacy within certain cultures that runs millennium deep. And it's a challenge to break through. And, I do have a couple of examples actually working with a Japanese company in doing that. And I think one of the keys to success there has just been repetition, and an intentionality of starting with really small groups. So, if you can start small, get psychological safety on a team of 4 to 6 people, and then they can model it and downstream it to even another person or two. It's a place to start. And that's one of the things that I've seen work, but boy, do you have to be patient.
Yeah.
So ladies, what am I missing?
I've extended that question actually just this week because I was thinking about that for leaders to say, what am I missing is great. But really, what are we collectively missing, I think is a big question too for teams. So what are we all missing? I think there's always more to learn, right? Karolin and I won't speak for you, but I know we share this belief that every single member of every single team has a role to play and that everyone can help increase psychological safety for the people around them, for the teams they're a part of. They can also inadvertently damage it if they're not paying attention. And so really what we ask is for everyone to just pick something to try from our book and see what works, and then experiment and see what's working and maybe what's not, and try something new, but commit to trying something, even if it's just listening differently in your next one-on-one conversation with someone. And you'll be surprised how much small behavioral changes done over time consistently can just have like a profoundly positive impact. So that's what I think we can all take away.
Yeah, I love that you immediately put into action one of our suggestions.
I'm a quick learner.
What are we missing? And actually, that was one kind of tool or move. Someone here from a big automotive company proposed as a pilot, just kind of an unofficial pilot, and he proposed to a team just this one to start with, just this one action. And he was blown away by the effect that generated. The meetings, which tended to be quite unproductive and unsatisfying, changed in nature just by applying this one question, this wonder question. And if I apply it to us now, what are we missing? It's not really missing, but we only touched upon it lightly. And it's related to leadership. I think this inner shift, I'd love to underline again, because even we propose in our book are really 25 very concrete actions. It's really all related to an inner shift. And we touched upon it when we talked about embracing risk and failure. So this inner shift from blaming to curiosity, for example.
Yes.
And we touched upon it when we discussed what am I missing as a leader, a shift from arrogance, maybe from this, maybe, I don't know, urge to know it all, to more humility.
Yes, absolutely. I love this.
So there's a fabric underneath, and this fabric has a lot to do with inner shifts, inner mindset shifts, also inner shifts, how you see yourself as a leader and how you relate to others. And our subtitle, Lead More Powerfully by Being More Human, is really kind of the core message, which is woven into this fabric.
Yes. Well, what I don't want people to miss is how to get your book and how to contact you. So please share that with us right now.
Yeah, well, the book is available on all the online retailers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, etc. And so you can find it there. We have a website for the book, and it's just simply the Psychological Safety Playbook.com. And we'd love you to go there because we also have some free content that will be interesting as a companion to the book. And you can sign up for our mailing list. We're going to be just learning more and sharing more. So that would be a great place. And then we're both on LinkedIn. So just Minette Norman on LinkedIn, Karolin Helbig on LinkedIn. We're very active. We really want to engage with people who read the book. We want to learn from you. We want to share ideas. And so please connect with us on LinkedIn and let us know what's resonating for you.
Great. I love creating a community around it. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, before we close out, I just want to do a quick recap for those who maybe weren't around for the whole show. The 5 major plays in the Psychological Safety Playbook, which these two ladies wrote together after meeting in an Amy Edmondson online program. First one, communicate courageously. And the big suggestion there is to ask the question I just asked, sort of in jest, but only to demonstrate how we can use it. What am I missing? Number 2, master the art of listening. And we want to listen to understand as opposed to listening to respond or listening to be right. Manage your reactions. So instead of reacting, take a beat, take a breath, and then respond in a way that you'd be proud of. Embrace risk and failure, which is be a little humble. Admit when you've made a mistake or you've had a failure. Commit to learning from it and then being resilient. Don't let that define you. And then the 5th, designing inclusive rituals. I love the suggestions for meetings that we talked about, including the no interruptions rule. And I also just want to repeat something that Karolin said about a great barometer of whether you're achieving psychological safety is how much are you laughing? So ladies, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, thank you for having us. Shani, it was great.
Thanks for having us.
You are so welcome, and I hope your book sells millions and billions of copies.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Our leadership here. Until next time. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Go to theleadershiftproject.com to sign up for the Scoop newsletter and explore all the resources from this podcast in the show notes. And follow me on Instagram at The Leadership Project and LinkedIn under my name, Shani Magoski, for inspiration and content about all things leadership. Make it a great day.